Right now, Russia is rehearsing an attack on NATO, hitting Poland with drones while Belarus treats on the border. The US pushes for new tariffs on China and India to cut off Russia's least oil customers, and Ukraine steps forward, offering NATO its unmatched drone defense experience. The West is watching, NATO won't forgive, and Russia's time is running out. Welcome to Ukraine Today. I'm Zorislava Kolesnikova, and in this episode we uncover the storm rising over Europe. Stay with us, the full breakdown is coming. Russia rehashes NATO attack, Poland under drone fire, Belarus on the move. A Russian drone strike hits Polish territory. At the same time, Belarus and Russia launch Zapad 2025, a massive war drill just miles from NATO borders. Experts say this isn't just another military exercise, it's a rehearsal, a test run for a real strike on NATO's eastern flank. Poland is on high alert, the Suwalki Gap is in danger, and the world is watching. Are we one step closer to all-out war? Full story coming up.
The Russian drone attack on Poland and the Zapad 2025 military exercises in Belarus are a rehearsal for an attack on NATO's eastern flank.
During exercises in Belarus, the Russian Federation is practicing the capture of the Suwalki corridor. Build.
RFA does not hide its goals and objectives. In Kaliningrad, Russia demonstratively deploys an Iskander missile system in broad daylight and on a busy road. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Defense of the aggressor country reports daily on successful training combat, missile and bomb strikes using aviation and the Navy against the territory of the North Atlantic Alliance.
The crews of MiG-31 aircraft equipped with the Kinzhal aviation complex conducted a flight over the neutral waters of the Barents Sea as part of the Joint Strategic Exercise West 2025. While carrying out the training combat mission, the crews practiced delivering a simulated airstrike on the enemy's critically important targets.
In response, NATO is strengthening its military capabilities in countries neighboring Russia. According to Polish media, the Eastern Sentinel mission, announced the day before by Mark Rutte, has already begun.
The Polish General Staff has published footage of a French A-400 transport aircraft landing in Minsk Mazowiecki. It delivered weaponry for Rafale fighter jets, which, as it turns out, are already in Poland.
As part of the mission, countries from Western and Northern Europe are strengthening the military technical capabilities of those nations most vulnerable to the Russian threat.
Denmark, France, Britain, and Germany in particular will be involved in these activities. Now that's telling. So we're talking about the practical application of Article 5 of the NATO Charter, namely collective security. On the territory of both Poland and the Baltic states, you see, there is a redeployment of units from both the armed forces of these countries and accordingly from NATO member states. First and foremost, this is about strengthening land borders to prevent possible provocations.
The protection of the eastern skies is also being reinforced. France, Britain, and Germany are deploying Rafale and Eurofighter fighter jets, as well as additional air defense systems to countries bordering Russia.
Any inaction, of course, is a display of weakness, which encourages the Russian Federation and others in the future to violate those, well, let's say, the boundaries of the architecture that were established, you know, in the Yalta and Potsdam peace agreements, which the United States is now trying to uphold.
Now the question is whether the US will support Europe. After Donald Trump's vague response, European politicians began to doubt Washington's willingness to actually defend NATO's borders.
What is your reaction to the drone incursion into Poland?
It could have been a mistake. It could have been a mistake. But regardless of that, I'm not happy about anything related to this situation. But I hope this will end.
The Kremlin is watching the response from Europe and the US. Weakness and ignoring the problem will serve as an invitation for Putin to move from rehearsals to a real attack.
US pushes G7 to slap tariffs on China and India. Russia's oil lifeline under threat. Washington is done playing nice. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bassett is calling on G7 allies to raise tariffs on China and India, the two biggest buyers of Russian oil. The goal: cut off Putin's cash and end the war faster. Can America convey the word to break Moscow ties to its key allies? Find out in our full report.
If China were to stop supporting Russia today, the war would end tomorrow, said Keith Kellogg, the U.S. Special Representative for Ukraine. He notes that the relationship between Beijing and Moscow can't even be called a partnership, since the Kremlin is in total dependence on China.
I think that if you look at the partners, if you look at China and Russia together, Russia is the junior partner. The Chinese possess economic power, military power. They have a history that clearly stands behind them and leadership that also backs them. I think that Russia would not be able to survive without support.
Year after year, trade turnover between China and Russia continues to grow. Moreover, the PRC helps the Federation circumvent sanctions, meeting its needs for both consumer and military goods. However, on the international stage, Beijing builds the image of a peacemaker, calls for a ceasefire, and also develops alternative peace plans. Nevertheless, regular visits by Putin to China dispel this illusory image, notes Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. China probably has the ability to force the Russians to stop killing, but the world has not seen any desire from China to make this happen with regard to Russia. China has called for a ceasefire in this war and for the war not to expand, but Putin has done nothing. This does not prevent China from warmly welcoming Putin and discussing with him the most important thing, longevity. By cooperating with Russia, China can buy oil and gas at reduced prices, experts note. China needs these resources to support its industry. Despite the gradual shift to renewable energy sources, traditional oil and gas still play a significant role in powering the country's economy. The revenue the Kremlin receives from selling raw materials is spent on military expenses as well as on dual-use goods that are utilized by the armed forces of the aggressor country. According to analysts, only a united international community is capable of breaking the ties between Beijing and Moscow.
Such policies and behavior deserve condemnation. And indeed, the international community must look for ways to restrict the access of Russian manufacturers to these components, semi-finished products, raw materials, microchips, and electronics, which are so critically important for them to create new weapons and use them against Ukraine.
Raising tariffs on Chinese goods could break the cooperation between Moscow and Beijing, wrote US President Donald Trump on the social network Truth Social. He called on all NATO countries to stop buying Russian oil as well as to impose sanctions in unison against those who still import it. Together, these measures could bring the end of Russian aggression closer, according to Donald Trump.
I am ready to impose sanctions on Russian oil whenever you are all ready. Just let me know when. I believe that this, as well as NATO, as a group imposing 50 to 100% tariffs on China, which will be completely lifted after Russia's war against Ukraine ends, will also be very helpful in stopping this deadly, senseless war. Donald Trump, President of the United States, on the social network Truth Social.
Sanctions against India and China for purchasing Russian oil were discussed by the finance ministers of the G7 countries on September 12th. This was reported by Reuters, citing its sources. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent called on his colleagues to join Washington's efforts to increase pressure on Beijing and New Delhi. Let me remind you that on August 27th, the United States raised tariffs on Indian goods to 50% in response to the country's refusal to stop importing oil from Russia. Andrei Dimitrenko for Freedom TV channel.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Ukraine offers NATO drone defense expertise. Zelensky calls for joint intercepts. Ukraine isn't just defending itself, it's helping defend all of Europe. President Zelensky says Ukraine is ready to share its battle-tested drone defense tactic with NATO and intercept enemy targets together. After meeting top advisors from the UK, Germany, France and Italy, Zelensky is pushing for united air defense. Is NATO ready to act? Full breakdown in our report.
NATO is launching Operation Eastern Sentinel to strengthen its positions on the alliance's eastern flank, announced the organization's Secretary-General Mark Rutte. He noted that the reason for this operation was the unprecedented attack by Russian drones on Poland. However, similar incidents have occurred before. The Secretary-General stated that UAVs from the aggressor country have also crossed the borders of Romania, Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia. According to him, the military operation will be carried out with the participation of various allied forces, including Denmark, France, the United Kingdom, Germany and other European countries.
I don't like this whole concept of the eastern flank because it creates the impression that if I live in Madrid or London, I'm safer than if I lived in Tallinn. But that's not true, because these latest Russian missiles, if launched, will travel at speeds 5 times the speed of sound. It will take them 5 or 10 minutes longer to reach Madrid or London than Tallinn or Vilnius.
The operation will combine air and ground defense and will strengthen information sharing between NATO countries, said the commander of the alliance's forces in Europe, Alexus Grinkovich. In addition, NATO emphasizes that, apart from traditional military means, the operation will focus on addressing challenges related to the use of UAVs. In particular, the proposal by the European Commissioner for Defense to create a wall against Russian drones is considered appropriate by the alliance under current conditions.
This fully aligns with some of our ideas about strengthening our eastern flank in terms of both land and air domains. And I have just returned from the Baltic states. Many countries are investing in technology, learning from Ukraine's experience about which sensors and what types of kinetic and non-kinetic weapons can be effective. The integration of such types of defense will certainly be something we want to focus on in the future.
The launch of Operation Eastern Sentinel is a decisive response to Russia's aggressive actions, said Polish Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz. He thanked the alliance leadership for giving proper attention to the defense of NATO's eastern borders.
Operation Eastern Sentinel is not only a strategic decision, but also a demonstration of responsibility for the security of the entire eastern flank of the alliance. This is active deterrence and readiness to defend wherever it may be necessary. We know that Ukraine's heroic defense is tied to the future of Europe. That is why we are increasing our defense capabilities. There is strength in unity and victory in readiness. Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, Polish Minister of Defense, on social network X.
Even before the announcement of the start of Operation Eastern Shield, Paris declared it would send 3 Rafale fighter jets to strengthen the protection of Polish airspace. NATO will not yield to growing pressure from Russia, stated French President Emmanuel Macron.
I made this commitment to the Prime Minister of Poland. I also discussed this issue with the NATO Secretary General and with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, who is also involved in matters of defending the eastern flank. The security of the European continent is our top priority. Emmanuel Macron, President of France, on social network X.
Germany will expand its patrols of the airspace over Poland, stated German federal government spokesperson Stefan Cornelius. According to him, these measures will complement the commitments already made to strengthen the defense of Poland, Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia. Let me remind you, Berlin has promised to expand its air mission in the region. Now, 4 Eurofighter jets will be patrolling there. The Bundeswehr has also already deployed a Patriot air defense system in the Baltic states. The enhanced measures will continue until the end of December. Andriy Dimitrenko for Freedom TV channel.
That's all for today on Ukraine Today. If you stand for truth and freedom, like, share and subscribe to stay informed with us. Most importantly, become a sponsor and fuel our mission to fight disinformation, expose war crimes and keep Ukraine's voice loud on the global stage. Stay strong, stay informed and stay with Ukraine.